The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home for Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm so thrilled to be here with you on this wonderful Thursday morning. Thursday is great because at some point today we're going to do a mindfulness moment, and that's a really good thing for all of us. But we've got a great show with great experts for you here on the show. I want you to know that for the next hour we're going to be here live. We're going to be talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective, right? Because we all come to this community in a different way, in a different shape, with different backgrounds, with different concerns and different challenges, right? And when I say the autism community, I'm talking about the larger autism community. That, of course, includes the individuals who are themselves on the autism spectrum, but it also includes, the larger community includes the people who love and care about them and are trying to help them to get the resources and the things that they need so that they can live the lives that they choose to lead, right? So that's what I'm talking about, that bigger community. Of course, that includes parents. It includes the teachers and the practitioners and the speech and language pathologists and the boyfriends and the girlfriends and the husbands and the wives and the grandmas and the uncles and the cousins, right? Everybody who cares about somebody on the autism spectrum. We all have different needs. This is not a one-size-fits-all, but we're all trying to help those people to be treated with the dignity and get the things that they need. That's the thing we have in common, right? But there's a lot to talk about within that community. So we want to know from you. We want to know what you need, what you're thinking, what you're feeling. If you just need a place to shout, because sometimes you just need a place to shout, right? We've got a place for you here. In fact, we've got a bunch of different places. So our fabulous Traven is going to show you some of the different ways that you can connect with us, some of the different ways that you can have your voice heard, some of the different ways that you can ask questions of our experts, which leads me to the next thing, that we have a lot of experts that are here on the show, and today I've got two fabulous experts for you on the show, but I just don't want you to ever confuse me with being one of the experts, because I'm not. I'm not an expert in autism. I am a mom of an individual who was diagnosed with autism at 2.5. That does not make me an expert, right? What it does is makes me somebody who cares deeply. I will tell you, because sometimes people get mad at me and go, Shannon, don't sell yourself short. What I like to say is that I've been in this community now for 14 years, and covering autism from a journalistic point of view for more than a decade. So I'm not an expert, but I have a very informed opinion. And that's what it is. It's an opinion about most things. So I'm going to be your cheerleader. I'm going to want to help to connect you. Sometimes the things that I know more about is when you write in and say something, I go, oh, you know, the person to talk to about that is this person, and can help to connect you to that person. That's really what I view myself as one of those old-fashioned telephone operators. You know, have you seen the old movies, the black and white movies, where, you know, they pull up the cord and they plug it in and they go, hello. So I picture myself going, hello, it's Autism Live. And then the person talks and they go, oh, well, what you need is this. And they pull that out and go, let me connect you. And they put it in another place so that those two people can talk together. That's how I picture myself, isn't well, and I paused because Traven was telling me that Nava has written in and said that I am an expert. Well, I think, Nava, respectfully, I have an informed opinion and I'm very willing to share it. Sometimes I overshare it. So If you want to write in of our experts, we will help to connect you. If they're here or if we're talking to them live, you can ask them questions. And I'm always happy to give you my informed opinion, but I'm also happy to keep that to myself too, because it doesn't always apply. You know what I'm saying? In any case, we are so delighted that you're here. And Nava, I'm thrilled that you're here, sending you love. As well as the rest of you who are watching us live. This has been an amazing week already, you guys. How about that interview with Joe Mantegna on Monday? I'm going tonight to see the play that he directed. Isn't that exciting? And then tomorrow, I'm going to see the play that we were featuring on Monday, that self-injurious behavior. I'm very excited about that. Big, big weekend. In any case, we like to start the show on Thursday with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to figure out what in the hey nani are those experts talking about? What does this have to do with me? Do I really need to know this term, right? In the beginning, I know I was just like you. I was like, stop. Why are you using these words? Why don't you just speak in a way that everybody understands? But then you realize, oh, well, this means specifically this, and that means this, and it saves time if you can just call it this because it's very specific. And then you're officially on the dark side, right? And you start using the term yourself. But until then, it can get in your way, and that's what I don't want to have happen. So we take this on one bite at a time, right? So today's term is, I'm pointing the wrong way, my Carol Merrill is off, stereotypy. Now, I love this because what we like to do here is we like to take a term, we give you the actual definition, we make fun of it, right? Because that's my favorite pastime. And then we give you a working definition so that you begin to understand it. But this is one of those terms, stereotypy. The first time I heard somebody say this, I was like, are you talking about like an old-fashioned stereo? What did you say? Stereotypy? I made them spell it. I was like, what on earth are you saying? I'm like reading their lips, right? So let's take a look at what the actual definition of stereotypy is. Stereotypy is repetitive or ritualistic behavior, sometimes referred to as self-stimulatory behavior or stimming. Okay. It always bothered me when they would say ritualistic, and when I think of rituals, I'm like, you know, are these like religious rituals? What are we talking about here? But they are things that become very ritualized for individuals who are on the autism spectrum, which means that they need to do it this way over and over and over again. So repetitive or ritualistic behavior, sometimes referred to as self-stimulatory behavior or stimming. So we've just added a bunch of jargon for you, right? But you probably have heard people talking about stimming. And I remember the first time I heard that term too, I was like, what are you saying? They're stemming? What is it, like STEM, like science, technology, math? What are we talking about here? Stimming. And then somebody told me, well, it's self-stimulatory behavior. And the thing that they were describing in my son, that they were saying that's stimming, and that's self-stimulatory behavior, I was like, no, it's not. He's not trying to stimulate himself. He's trying to calm himself down, right? So let's move on to our working definition and see if we can't figure out stereotypy here. So stereotypy are behaviors that are done repetitively, for instance, body rocking, hand flapping, lining up toys, and movie talk. These are things that our kids do that we usually put these in the category of something that the experts call automatic reinforcement. And what that means is that these things that they're doing, and they're doing them over and over again, right? Like I'm rocking, or it could be the hand flapping, or it could be the, how some kids look up out of the corner of their eyes, or the one that my son engaged in when he was little was vocal stereotypy. So he would make those noises like R2-D2 and just go, you'd say something to him and he'd go, I can't even do it as high as he could do it. So your kids might be doing something different. They might do that movie talk or the echolalia, but it's these things that they do repetitively. And often, because they do it repetitively, it can be something that starts to drive us a little buggy, right? But it's really important to remember that, and again, that self-stimulatory thing, I hate that term because it's a misnomer. It isn't always. Sometimes it's to stimulate themselves. Sometimes it's to calm themselves. But the main thing, and the reason why the experts call it automatically reinforcing, is because there's something about it that gives the individual a paycheck. Now, here's the really important part. They need a paycheck. This cannot be discounted. Like if you went to every person on the planet, neurotypical or otherwise, and said, I'm going to take away everything that makes your life work, we would have like chaos, right? If we just went to you and said, I'm sorry, all the things that you do to cope, we're going to take those away. And you know why? Because it's not socially acceptable what you're doing, right? That would feel punitive. That would feel harmful. You would be like, well, I'm sorry that it's not okay for you, but this is what's working for me. So I think it's important that we understand it from this point of view first. Then we can look at it and go, all right, this behavior, what's wrong with it? Because if it's just that it's driving other people crazy, I think we could all grab a whoopee, right? Because if this is helping somebody and it's just annoying to you, we all need to learn to adjust. But here's the rough part, is that this is hard to do to calm yourself down if you're learning how to write, right? So what the teacher who's trying to teach them to write their name, which is a skill that's going to help them throughout the rest of their life, you know, this is more than just annoying, it's problematic. Because if it has to happen all the time, this isn't really useful. So we don't just take this away, we have to find a way for the individual to get the same paycheck out of some other behavior. And, you know, sometimes we will look at a behavior and go, well, it's making the other kids not be nice to the kid. I always find this really rough because I want to go in and teach the other kids, hey, you got to be more accepting, right? Not everybody's on that page. So in the meantime, we want to be able to help our kids, when possible, to have to fit into people who won't quite do the work to accept them, right? Makes me nuts too, but we you know, we want our kids to be accepted, right? But more importantly, if it's not productive, we want to be able to help them to either turn this on and off. Like there's some parts of the day where you can do this. You absolutely can. And when you need to do this, we want to be able to give you another behavior that helps you to calm yourself. It may be that, you know, what you do is that you bounce your legs while you're doing this. It may be that we put you on a ball so that you can get a little bit of a bounce to the ball while you're writing. It's still going to be hard to write, but it won't be impossible. You can't write while you're doing this, right? So super important that we understand and appreciate, why are our kids doing this? It's not just random. If you are still being told by somebody, oh, well, that's just a random behavior that your child is doing and it has no meaning, I hope that you will stick up for your kiddo and say, no. This is an automatically reinforcing behavior and we need to give it a very viable and reinforcing replacement. And maybe we need to give specific times during the day when they can freely do the stereotypy so that they get to download or upload whatever it is that they need to upload, okay? Be very wary of experts who just say, well, we're gonna change that behavior. We're gonna take that behavior because it's not socially acceptable and we're gonna get rid of it, right? That's very inhumane. I don't agree with that, and I think that good ABA practitioners don't agree with that either. Any good behavior intervention plan says, you know, there's an antecedent to try to make sure that if it's caused by stress, that we reduce their stress. There's a replacement behavior that's taught, right, that gives the same paycheck, and then we get to consequences for not doing the behavior. So if you have somebody who is doing this and we need them to write, we give them the replacement behavior, we put that in place, and then we reward them for being able to write instead of having to do this constantly. Okay? That is how we want to look at these behaviors. Stereotypy, when you know it makes a difference, right? Okay, that's our jargon today. Let's move on to our question of the day. Our question today for all of you You ready for this? When you're tired, what do you do to stay awake? What's the thing that you do if, yesterday I was sitting there working at my computer and it's the time, 3:30 for me is the hour, right? And a friend in graduate school who said, oh, it's low tide. It's when your body has the least amount of water in it. You need to drink water. So I started, at 3 o'clock trying to pound a little bit more water to stay awake. But usually at 3:30, I got to get up and take a lap around the office to just, get a little bit more, because I found myself getting a little, cross-eyed. But what do you do? Some people hum to themselves. Some people, have play with like something with their hand, like a koosh ball or a rubber band or something. What do you do to keep yourself awake and focused? Because guess what that is? That is a form of an automatic reinforcing self-stimulatory behavior. I just wanted you guys to see, and I want you to write, because maybe other people need help to know, what do you do to stay awake? What do you do to stay focused? But we all engage in these behaviors, every single one of us. And when we engage in them over and over, it's because they were productive for us. It might be annoying to the person next to you. I have a friend who sisses, you know what I mean? And his wife will go, stop with the sissing, you're making me crazy, right? But that's his thing. We all need our thing. Okay, moving on. And please write into us on Facebook about how you do this, because I think it'll help other people. And but moving on, we always have a topic for the week. We're finishing out the week today and tomorrow. Dun, 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 dun. The topic of this week is making it meaningful. We talk a lot on the show about all the things that you can do and all the things that there are out there to do, doing your intensive ABA and doing the full prescription, doing those autism enrichment things like taking classes, whether you go and spend time on a horse, or whether you take a singing class or a pottery class or something that feeds the soul of everybody in the family in different ways, right? All those things are super duper important, because we need to make this meaningful. If all we ever do is work, if all we ever do is simply strive to be better, it's not that that's a bad thing, but we have to fill the enrichment in, right? And it has to be meaningful to the person. I was talking very frankly with another mom of a teenager the other day, and we were talking about the fact that it's very tempting in these teenage years to pick at your child and be like, don't do that, stand here, don't set, like, what are you doing? Why are your eyebrows doing that, right? Why didn't you do this to your hair? Which thing did you put in your hair, right? There's so many little pieces that you kind of want to get in there and be like, let me fix this for you, right? Although you can't, because they want more independence. And by the way, that's all of our kids. That's our kids on the spectrum. They want more independence. It is not lost on them that they are getting older and that they should be moving towards that direction. Yes, maybe they need more support than somebody else, but they still want that independence. And we, kind of want to pick at and whatever. And it's really important that we don't make that our whole relationship with our kids, right? That we need to make this time and every time meaningful. We need to do what matters. We need to make it matter, right? What's that phrase that they say about mean what you say and say what you mean and mean what you say, right? But we need to live that way. We need to live with purpose and know that we're not just doing things because, well, we've always done it that way. No, it has to be meaningful. It has to be important to you. It has to be important to every person in your family. And if something isn't meaningful, it doesn't feel right, does it? So we're talking about that a little bit today, how we make things meaningful. And when something isn't working, stop yourself and say, what part of this isn't working? Doesn't mean you got to throw the whole thing away, but what part of this isn't working? What part of this is meaningful to me? What part of this is important? We're going to be talking about this a lot as we approach the holidays, right? Because the holidays are a place where this gets upside down, right? Where sometimes we're like, well, we've got to have this, that, or whatever because it's required for that holiday. And I'm just going to say to you over and over and over again from now until February 14th, yeah, what's meaningful to you about this? That's what you need to do. Not all the rest of the mishigas, right? What's meaningful to you? What's meaningful to your child? What's meaningful to your spouse? What's meaningful to every member of your household? And that's what we want to do. We want to get in that lane. Okay, so to this end, the guests that we have here on the show today, I'm really excited. So in just a second, in fact, we're a little bit late, autism expert Hitomi Wada is going to be with us, and she's going to be answering some of your questions. And then we have Dr. Sailaja Golla, and I'm sure that I have slaughtered that. She's a pediatric neurologist, and she's going to be talking with us specifically about autism and neurology, and I know it's going to be amazing. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be back with Hitomi after these messages. Stick with us. Parent to parent, one of the most frightening things there is when your child wanders away or elopes. This is when they leave an area without permission. And we know science has shown that over 50% of children on the autism spectrum will engage in this kind of behavior. But we don't have to just accept it as fact. There are things that we can do to teach our children how to appropriately ask when they want to go someplace. But before we can teach, we have to know why they're doing it. Are they wandering away to go to something, or are they wandering away to escape something? Really important that we know that. And once we do know that, then we can put in place these really effective teaching strategies. I want to remind you, though, that if your child is engaging in this kind of behavior, it's really important to work with an expert. Get professional help. They'll be able to effectively figure out why your child is doing it and put an intervention in place that's effective. And when you stop and think about it, there's nothing more important than keeping our children safe. You might be asking yourself, a BIP, what on earth is that?
Inclusion is everything. Feeling like we have a place where we belong, and when I say we, I'm first and foremost a mother of a child on the spectrum and not, and gym owner and now founder of carrying this to families who need it as well.
My son is extremely hyperactive. Getting him to calm down is a very difficult task. So the idea of Rock the Spectrum Gym, where he could just go and run and play and do all these fun things without any kind of worries and just go, go, go and bring down that energy, it helps us so much at home. You know, in the home or at school, it's not acceptable, but this is the one place it is acceptable for the child to kind of be themselves and get it all out there and just really just be themselves.
It's an amazing place where my son could go and be himself. You get to meet other parents who are in the same journey as you are.
I think the most popular aspect of it is how they include all children of all types, not just only learning disabled, lower functioning, moderate functioning, high functioning, and non-disabled.
People there are so friendly. Everybody's like family. They always greet you with a smile. There's not one negative thing I could say about any of the employees. They're all absolutely amazing. I think every parent should walk in through those doors and see what an amazing gym it is.
Now a diagnosis being 1 out of 6 kids are in some way or form affected with sensory processing disorder or autism. That's why We Rock Now is on the rise. People want to be a part of it. People know that they have a community there. They know that they can learn more information about things that they don't know themselves or that they can share, build friendships, and basically get what you get in an OT facility, but it's not $150 an hour. It's $12.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I love Thursdays when we get to do Ask an Autism Expert, and our expert today is Hitomi Wada, and we're so thrilled to welcome her for the first time to the show. Hitomi, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're thrilled to have you. Can you tell us what your job title is and where you work, what you do?
Yeah, I'm a clinical manager at CARD, and I am working at the center in San Mateo, California. And my job here in San Mateo is just overseeing the clinical aspect of the services that we provide. So touching base with our clinical supervisors, assistant supervisors, and the therapists.
Wonderful. And we're seeing a lovely picture of you. And I have not, I've talked to you, I've talked to your therapist, and yet I have never been to that office. I hear that it's beautiful, and I need to come up there and see all of you face to face.
Yes, please come.
I would love to. So, Hitomi, we're going to launch into some questions that viewers have written in here. And the first one is, good morning. My son has ASD and is going into 5th grade next year. He really struggles in school with starting his work and has a lot of escape behaviors to get out of pretty much all subjects. He is very goal-oriented outside of the classroom and loves making up quests to achieve with activities he likes, like bike riding, video games. How can we translate this drive to achieve to the classroom? He also has major anxiety over any type of test that is timed. He will know the material, but as soon as he finds out that it has a time limit, he shuts down. And they said thank you in advance. So Hitomi, what advice do you have for this parent?
Yeah, of course. First of all, kudos to the parent for being able to describe escape behaviors. I thought that was really great. But you know, some things that I definitely want to look into is just making sure that they touch base with the teachers, at the staff, and making sure that the escape behaviors are not being after these behaviors, what's happening.
Okay, we lost you for just a second, and it was right at the most important part of the sentence where you were saying that we want to make sure that these escape behaviors aren't, and then we lost you.
Being reinforced.
Being reinforced. I wanted to make sure we got to that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, continue.
Okay. And then, you know, we also want to figure out why this individual is engaging in escape behaviors after these tasks are being presented, right? So is the work too hard? Is it too easy? And just working with a teacher to figure out how his work and task can be adjusted. And then lastly, I'd advise the parents to figure out what reinforcement systems are in place in his classrooms for completing the work, and then comparing those to what motivates him at home. So I know that the parent mentioned like bike riding and video games, and of course these reinforcers are not available at school. So being really creative about what they can bring in his classroom.
Yeah, and I love too that this mom describes escape. We talk about these kinds of things a lot on the show, Hitomi.
Sure.
But for people who don't know what that means, can you briefly talk about what they mean by escape behaviors?
Yeah, so all human beings engage in behaviors for 4 common reasons, and one of them is escape or avoidance, and that's when, you know, sometimes they engage in elopement or aggression or self-injurious behaviors or even just like tantrums to try to get out of something that they don't want to do.
Absolutely, and by the way, like she said, we all do this. The escape behavior that I exhibit when it comes time to do our taxes is like I should videotape it, right?
That is a perfect example.
Because I will start scrubbing a part of the kitchen floor that I don't ever even know the zip code of, but I will do that to get out of doing the taxes, right?
Yeah.
Anything. Okay. So thank you so much for that answer. I'm going to move on to the next question. My son is 12 years old, has ADD, and he and his my eyes are going, and the sentence is a little, and he is getting older. As he is getting older, there we go, he's becoming more aggressive when he heard the word no and doesn't get his way. Have you suggestions as to how I can stop this aggression without giving in? He is verbal, but has a learning difficulty. I would really appreciate your advice.
Yeah, so first and foremost, I really want to make sure that this parent has support. Anytime when we're managing behaviors like aggression, we really want to make sure that the parents are involved and they're trained in how to manage the behaviors in a way that they can keep themselves safe, but also her child safe. But with that being said, I believe that waiting skill is a requisite for individual to be able to cope with being told no. So definitely working on waiting for items that might be, starting off with low preferred or neutral items, and then gradually working up towards the ones that he does have a really hard time accepting no to. The other tips that I have is, changing the word no to something else. So basically saying no without saying no. So you can say something like, maybe not now or maybe later. Some of those type of phrases I think I've heard parents use in the past. And then lastly, definitely offering similar choices of what he can have rather than just ending it at no. So, if he's asking for chips and we might not have chips, you can say, you can have crackers or yogurt, whatever snack that you might have, so that you have those options available.
Yeah, I remember making a little list because, you get into a rut as a parent of saying, the same thing over and over again. And anytime we would get into a rut, they would say to me, you're saying the same thing. Our team would say, you're saying the same thing over and over again. You got to vary it up. And so I would make little lists that I had on little pieces of Post-it paper of different ways that I could say no without using NO. And, different, and then it was other phrases too for different things that I had to do. But being able to say, not right now. And there was a whole list. I'll have to see if I can find it somewhere. But, and I kept those lists, in my purse and on the refrigerator to remind me that there are different ways that I can say things. Because to hear no, no, no all the time is really a drag. None of us wants to hear that.
Right.
And the working on waiting, I have to say, is one of the most interesting things that I ever saw was when we were, the team was teaching my son how to wait. I think that this is a class, we should do a whole thing on that sometime on the show. I'm just making a note to myself because every single parent should have an opportunity to see how you guys teach waiting because it's a brilliant, brilliant thing. But moving on to the last question. Tell me, they want to know, what can I do to stop my 2-year-old on the spectrum from hitting? He does it when he's upset.
Yeah, so kind of like what we talked about earlier, we want to first figure out the function or what's causing the behavior. And so when he's upset, is he getting upset because you take something away from him or you're denying something? Because if that's the case, then we can identify that he's getting upset and he's hitting because he wants access to those things. And that's called tangible function. And so we want to identify, is it attention? Is he getting upset when you're not paying attention to him or you're paying attention to somebody else? Or is it escape? Similar to the first child, is he getting upset and hitting because you're about to make him do something that he doesn't want to do, or he wants to discontinue something that's already happening? But, across all of those functions or the reasons why he may be hitting, definitely pushing for communication skills, I think would be helpful for, her son and herself. But starting off with, can he say one word? Can he say like please or more or no? Can he imitate signs to indicate yes, no, and please? Or if not, then making little pictures or textuals so that he can exchange those to indicate this is what I want. Trying to replace the hitting with more functional communication would definitely be highly recommended.
Wonderful. You've given me so many ideas here. I've had to take notes. So, Hitomi, thank you so much for being here and for taking the time to be with us. And thank you for all the things that you do for all of the families that you work with. We really appreciate you.
Thank you for your time and thanks for having me again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So that was the wonderful Hitomi Wada, and what great advice she had. I don't know about you, but it just fills me to know that there are all these wonderful experts that are out there sprinkled all over the country that are helping families. That just helps me to sleep at night. You want another expert? I've got one for you. I have got you so covered today. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we've got Dr., and of course I'm slaughtering the name here, Dr. Sailaja Golla. I'm not sure. She's going to tell us how we say it, but she is a pediatric neurologist specializing in autism. So don't go away. Right back with her after these messages.
Hard times lead to good choices. Many times you're going to find out that change is coming and it's not something that you like to see. Things sometimes just don't work. Sometimes you have to put your child in a new school. Sometimes you have to put them in a different classroom. Often you'll see this with perhaps special education versus regular education, or everyone's favorite, puberty. All bets are off then. However, these things happen when they need to happen. So making that hard choice is super, super scary. But when you open those doors to look at things that maybe you've never dreamed you would have to look at, you're going to find help that you never expected. There are a lot of people out there dealing with the same things that you are dealing with, and there is a level of help that you never even knew existed. So don't be afraid when it's time to look at the scary problems that you're having. When those things come up, when the aggression increases, when things are falling apart at home, when you're getting the calls from the schools, don't be afraid. Reach out. Find out what you need to do. You might need to look at new schools, new housing. You might need to access new levels of service. But I am telling you, you're going to see amazing things. There are children that, as they grow, do things with the help of others, very specialized support, that you never thought they could do. So once you do that and you meet the child where he or she is and you give them what they need, everybody can do better, and you're going to see amazing progress.
We're okay.
You're on read.
Okay. Welcome back to Autism Live. We are welcoming for the first time to the show Dr. Golla. I hope I'm saying it right. She is a pediatric neurologist specializing in autism. She is based out of Dallas, and she says about 70 to 80% of the kids that she sees in her clinic have autism, and that she is currently in the middle of going from an academic practice to a private practice. So if you are in the Dallas area and looking for a pediatric neurologist specializing in autism, there she is. She's got major awards and honors: 2018 Texas Top Doctor USA Top Doctors, 2017 Mom Approved Doctor at DFW North Texas Child Parent Magazine. I mean, these are just like, there's a list. We would be here the whole interview if I were going to go through all of them. But I will say that you are currently an Associate Program Director at NDD Residency Program at UT Southwestern Medical Center and current Co-Director for Neurodevelopmental Disabilities Clinical Program at UT Southwestern Medical Center. So, wow. Welcome. We're thrilled and excited to have you with us. We're going to jump right in here and say, how do you define autism as a pediatric neurologist?
I would define autism as a neurodevelopmental disorder. I do not call it as a disability because I do not think and strongly disagree that autism should be called as a disability. As we know, the criteria for autism keeps changing every 5 years with the new DSM criteria. So currently, I would define it as a neurodevelopmental disorder which has restricted behaviors and communication problems. Specifically, it could be nonverbal or verbal communication associated with restrictive repetitive behaviors, is how I would define autism in a simple language.
Wonderful. And for parents who are watching this who are maybe in the beginning of seeing things that they're not sure what they are, what do you tell them to look for in terms of signs or symptoms or red flags that might be autism?
Some of the red flags parents can watch for is at the age of 6 months. So as early as 4 to 6 months, mom or dad at home could notice some of the red flags. For example, at 6 months, if the child has no eye contact, does not play with the toys in the crib, that's a red flag. By 12 months, if there is no babbling, that's a red flag again. By 16 months, if the child has absolutely no words, no two-word phrases, which does not include repeating and imitating, it has to be two meaningful words, that's definitely a red flag. Some of the other signs which parents and caregivers can look for are flapping, rocking, spinning, unusual sensitivity to the six senses, touch, texture, lights, colors, sounds, smells. These are some of the red flags parents and caregivers can look for.
Okay. Now, there are a lot of opinions out there, but as a pediatric neurologist, I'm going to ask you the question, what do you believe is the cause of autism?
That's a very good question.
It's an incendiary question, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want to.
Yes, I can definitely answer. It's a very good question, and most parents, caregivers, physicians, anyone in the community would like to know what causes autism. So in the past, going back 10 years back, we did not have a definite cause for autism. We would come up with a lot of things. For example, do vaccines cause autism? Is there something in the environment? Is it bad parenting, for example? So none of those cause autism for sure. What are some of the things which cause autism? As of today, we strongly believe that there is a genetic association. So 10 to 20% of the time, we do find a genetic cause. So it's very important for a child to get genetic testing done as one of the primary important diagnostic considerations. It could be done at a pediatrician's office or a geneticist or a neurologist, any of the providers could do. Because we do not want to miss out on those 10 to 20% of the time where there is something which can be done. So if we know the cause, we could do something. And there are other causes like prematurity, alcoholism during pregnancy, drugs in pregnancy, some of the other things which can be linked to autism. But definitely genetics is the top number one cause in 10 to 20% of the time. But again, there is this 80% where we do not know what causes autism. It's also called as idiopathic or unknown cause, and that's the majority.
Okay, thank you. I want to turn now to talk very specifically about being a neurologist and dealing with autism. When should parents who have a child who's been diagnosed, on the spectrum, when should they be coming to a pediatric neurologist? What kinds of symptoms bring parents to you?
I would say the earlier the better. Like I mentioned earlier, we could see some red flags at 6 months of age, but typically a child is diagnosed around 3 years of age by the school district. Anytime a family or a caregiver notices any regression, that's a big red flag. Regression specifically with social skills or communication, say the child was talking and all of a sudden, hey, my child is not talking, that's a big red flag. Any speech delay, any language or communication issues, delay in social interaction, they should definitely go through the pediatrician and get a simple screener. There is something called as MCHAT, which could be done by any pediatrician. You don't even need a referral. An ECI, an early childhood interventionist, could do this as early as 15 to 16 months. A parent or a neighbor, for example, could go online and do the simple screener. And if you fail the screener, then yes, that's definitely a concern, and the child needs a full evaluation of autism. So the earlier the better, typically around 3 years of age.
But then, should every child who's been diagnosed with autism go to a neurologist? Is it everybody that should go, or only certain children with autism go to a neurologist?
That's an interesting question as well. I think it depends. There are multiple providers in the society who specialize in autism. Some of the pediatricians, specifically developmental pediatricians, are very well versed in autism. So if the child has seen a developmental pediatrician and has got the required testing, then they do not need to see a neurologist. If they have seen a genetic specialist, for example, then they do not need to see a neurologist. Or if your pediatrician is well versed with autism, that's fine too. But if a child has concerns for seizures, significant developmental regression, or there is concerns for like motor milestones, not walking, weak on one side, concerns for something else in the face, like abnormal features in the face, abnormal craniofacial features, like a flat nose, unusual lips, big head. Yes, those are some of the signs which might need a referral to a neurologist.
Wonderful. That's really what I wanted to get to. And so let's talk specifically about seizures, because this is something that, there's a significant portion of the autism community that the kids will have seizures. And it seems like from the parents that I talk to that what they find is that their child has a seizure, and seizure in terms of how all of us think, like a grand mal seizure, where it's really outwardly recognized by people who aren't even experts that it's a seizure, but then they go to the neurologist and find out that their child was having subclinical seizures for a long period of time. Do you see that, or is that just my group of friends?
So in general, compared to the normal population, there is a 15% higher risk of seizures or epilepsy in children with autism. So if there is a concern, I would definitely go ahead and get him or her evaluated by a neurologist. They typically do what is called as an electroencephalogram, where they have leads on the head, just like the EKG. And it would help us or give us a supporting diagnosis of epilepsy if the child is at risk for seizures. And grand mal seizures, it's usually common more so in adults, but in a child with autism, it's really challenging because they could have as small as staring spells, and some of the repetitive stereotype behaviors, like eye rolling, looking towards one side, could be confused with seizures. They might be seizures or they might be behavioral spells. So I think it's important to go ahead and get an EEG if we are not sure if it's a stereotype related to autism or is it a subtle seizure. And a lot of children do have what is called as petit mal seizures, absence seizures, which are treatable. So we do not want to miss out on an earlier diagnosis and treatment. So better to get evaluated and get an EEG as there is a higher risk of epilepsy in children with autism.
Okay. Now, as a neurologist, I'm going to ask you this question. Is there a relationship between electronics use and autism? Because there's been a lot of controversy about this of late. Do you see that in your practice? Is it related to electronics use?
Electronics do not cause autism in general, so that's like a statement. And yes, many parents and some providers also claim that electronics cause autism. No, it does not. In fact, I would say that as a physician, I sometimes recommend a specific apps on, say, for example, iPad. There are communication things. The child specifically with autism is more, I would say, has the special gift how to use electronics or get into the mechanical stuff. So I would not restrict, but again, in general, too much of screen time or a one-way interaction, like just watching a movie or doing something on iPhone or an iPad nonstop for more than 2 hours at a time, definitely it could be injurious. But this is, I would not treat an autistic child different from any other child. Yes, too much of electronics is bad, but again, I would restrict it to two-way interactive games, which might actually be beneficial in children with autism. So electronics do not cause autism.
Okay. And then we're running out of time here, but there's currently a lot of talk about CBD oil and cannabinoids. And where are you on that? Do you feel like it has a place has its own role in the treatment of autism?
A very good question again. We do not know yet. There are a lot of studies going on currently. I would suggest families and listeners to go to clinicaltrials.org or the National Institute of Health website and see if they would like to participate in one of the CBD studies. Currently, it is not yet approved for the treatment of autism. So as a physician or as a pediatrician, we cannot prescribe CBD oil, but I do see families getting it for elsewhere. Some of them have seen some change, some not as much, but we do not have enough research as of today. But I would definitely encourage families to participate in research studies if available on the clinical trials website.
Okay, we've had a couple of questions that have come in the live feature. Somebody wants to know, getting genetic testing, does this involve the parents getting the test or does the child get the test? And also they want to know what are the names of the tests that they should be requesting?
Definitely. A child definitely needs to get the genetic testing. Parents do not need to get genetic testing as an initial step unless the child's genetic testing comes back abnormal or there is a concern. And it does say in the report, parental genetic testing is advised. What are the tests? Primarily recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the Neurology Society. It's chromosomal microarray. And we also test for what is called as Fragile X syndrome because 30% of children with Fragile X syndrome can have autism. So CMA or a microarray and Fragile X testing are the two most common testings recommended. If it's a girl with regression, I would also recommend what is called as MECP2 or Rett syndrome testing.
Okay. I didn't realize that was only girls, so that's very interesting. And then another person wants to know, what can you recommend for assessing for parents who live in countries like Africa and don't have access to a neurologist or a pediatrician?
So I think with the advance in technology, we are coming up with telemedicine, echo, and multiple other things. I would still recommend them going to one of the national websites. Our Autism Speaks has also been participating in the ECHO program. So they could still go through their regular pediatrician, and their pediatrician could participate in one of the web interviews or telemedicine interviews with a group of experts and get answers to the questions.
Wonderful. We want to thank you so much for being here with us. Can you give us information of where people can reach you if they would like to become one of your patients as you're starting your private practice in Dallas, Texas?
Definitely. I will be working at Texas Institute of Neurological Disorders, TIND.com. And you could, once you log into Texas Institute of Neurological Disorders, you'll get multiple numbers for different office locations. And I'll be based all over Dallas Metroplex with multiple locations throughout the Metroplex area.
And that's starting September 1st, which is next, it's this week. So it's at the end of the week.
Labor Day weekend.
There we go. So if you are in the Dallas area or can get to the Dallas area and would like to be seen, you can get a hold of her there. And we want to thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Shannon.
You have a wonderful weekend.
You too. Thanks.
Bye-bye. That was very interesting, wasn't that? Very edifying. I don't think that we have time to go to a break because I want to deal with some of the questions that we have had and comments that we have had come in. We want to say hi to MDA Mental Disorder that is, MDA Mental Disorder Awareness that has joined us. We're thrilled that you're here. Birdie says, I swear my vision is getting worse and it's also smaller. Here we go. I can pinch it and make it bigger. Did everybody just have that moment for me and go like, pinch it, Shannon? Okay, good afternoon. Child has not been diagnosed yet. She's 12. She's my granddaughter I'm raising. I'm thinking she has autism. She is on an IEP speech, but she has meltdowns and acts like she doesn't know what was asked of her, but then will tell someone else she just didn't want to do it. Her meltdowns are getting violent. And you know, I want to give you a hug, first of all, because grandmas are amazing, and the fact that you have said, I'm stepping it up for this individual, props, right? Props and love. So, and I think it's super important that you ask if you can, you know, get a diagnosis or get her looked at, because, you know, it may be that there's nothing going on except that there's been, you know, a fair amount of upheaval in her young years, 12 years, because 12 and girls, it's going to be hormones anyway, but let's not guess. Get her looked at and see if you can get her some help and support. It's important, though, to know that when people are having meltdowns, let's talk about the difference between a tantrum and a meltdown, right? Because you can see them, right? Tantrum is when somebody's upset and they're a little bit, borderline out of control, but, they're still aware of what they want, right? Tantrum. They can be mad, they can be throwing themselves sideways, they can throw things, but they know what they want. And if you were to give it to them, it would stop. Don't give it to them, right? But I'm just saying, if you did, if they were like, I want the lollipop, tearing the place apart, and you go, here's the lollipop, then the tantrum would stop. That's a tantrum. Meltdown is when it veers to the left, and even if you gave them what they wanted, it wouldn't be over. That's meltdown, okay? And when it's a meltdown, there's always, almost always, I don't want to say always, but there's almost always a sensory component, which means that there's something else on board. It could be so many different things, you guys. It could be a food allergy. It could be a clothing tag that is making the person crazy. It could be that they didn't get enough sleep. It could be that their blood sugar is high or low, or that they're having stomach cramps, or that, they're about to have their period and there's hormones and cramps, right? But there's always some other sensory. It could be that the light from above is too much. For some of our kids, it could be, my son had meltdowns and we didn't know it for years, but whenever he would walk on tile, because it visually confused his brain and he thought he was gonna fall through the tiles, that the tiles were blank spaces. So meltdowns are an entirely different thing. And if she's having meltdowns, you really got to start to be a detective and start to look at, I tell people always, even with a tantrum, I'm folding my paper. People who watch the show know what's happening here. 3 columns. You do A, B, and C, and you just keep these notes for yourself. This is not something to be shared with her, but whenever she has a tantrum, and you're not going to have it with you right then, but as soon as you can, you go, and the first thing that you do, so A, B, C, you fill in the B. The B is the behavior. What was she doing? You're just going to describe, she was throwing things, she was spitting, she was yelling obscenities. Just write it all down. It'll be therapeutic for you, right? The C is the consequence. What happened as a result of it? Did she get what she wanted? Did she not get what she wanted? What happened, And then after you've written in the B and the C, then you go back to the A and say, okay, as I recall, what started all of this? What happened right before? What else was going on today that might have contributed to this? Well, she had a headache last night and was throwing up with her headache. So we know something's going on, right? She didn't get good sleep. Or, you know, she ate Fruit Loops for lunch. What happened right before or within a couple of hours? Take notes for yourself. And then underneath all of it, draw a line and put in the next one. Note the date and the time, because at somewhere down the line, a pattern will emerge. And you will go, huh, that's funny. She only has the tantrums on the day that she eats the Fruit Loops. Could be the artificial colors and flavors in the Fruit Loops that are setting her off. And then you take those out for a couple of weeks and see, do we still have meltdowns, right? So it's being a detective. And at some point, if they're getting worse and they're getting violent, you got to call other people in. You got to get experts on it. And when you have these notes to hand to the experts, everything moves faster. They'll be like, oh, okay, well, you know, this is the pattern that we see, because they're trained to see the pattern. But you'll start to see a pattern too. So when they're 12, it's like now. Get it under control now. Find out what's really making her, because she's going through stuff. The 12-year-old body is like a place that's, you know, it's got issues. There are things going on for her, and we want to give her ways of communicating what she needs and what she wants so that she doesn't have to get the tantrum and we don't have to get to the meltdown. So I'm sending you a hug, Grandma, and telling you, get yourself some support, see if you can get somebody to look at her, and we're out of time. And that's terrible because I have other questions that I want to get to, but can I just tell you guys what a privilege it is to be here with you? And you know what I always say, we do this together. We hold hands, si se puede, right? There is help and there is hope. I know somebody had written in a couple of different times about having, you know, a child who's 5 and wanting to know when don't they progress past. And I'm telling you that we're all human beings and we're all always making progress. There is no end to progress. Yes, there's a window of time when we know that the brain is more plastic, where there might be an opportunity for more progress. But, you know, you and I can learn new languages. It might take us longer than it takes a 3-year-old, but we can learn new languages. So please don't think that growth and learning and potential are ever over. We have heard stories of people who began speaking when they were older. That isn't every case for people who are nonverbal, but certainly at 5, I would not be in a place of giving up on that. I will tell you, though, statistics show us that giving that individual an augmentative device, that more children learn to speak and learn to speak faster if they have been considered nonverbal and they've been given an augmentative device like an iPad or something, so that they can have a way of communicating until speech comes in. Don't give up, okay? The individuals we love on the autism spectrum, we're never giving up, right? Never. All right, I thank you guys all for being here. Don't forget, I never can find my cheat sheet. What is wrong with me? Oh my gosh. So tomorrow on the show, this is so good. Tomorrow on the show, we have the amazing Swathi. She is the host of an autism awareness radio show, and she is the mom of Siri. And we have a wonderful plea for you tomorrow. They're making a documentary about Siri's life. It's so inspirational, you guys. You're not going to want to miss it. She's here with Nancy and I tomorrow, and we've got some great in the news. So I hope that you guys will all have a wonderful Labor Day, but tune in tomorrow. You'll love the show. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.